And welcome to a special edition of the Reigns on the Cardinals podcast. Mike Reigns, Rob Reigns, broadcasting from a remote location, taking advantage of some nice days, day off by the Cardinals, nice weather and we're in the same spot, so we decided to kind of do it this way.
Yeah, it's a nice day to come out and recap a wonderful week for the Cardinals here.
Thanks, of course, to all our major podcast sponsors, Archwell Health, the Rawlings Experience, Drury Hotels, Triple I Travel of Missouri, and all of our other sponsors as well for bringing this free podcast to you. We've been doing them now for several weeks. We appreciate everybody who's written to us and said how much they've enjoyed it. If you ever got a question that you'd like us to answer on the podcast, you can send it to reigns@stlsportspage.com or stlsportspage@gmail.com, I believe it is, to get that email to us, and we'll be happy to answer any questions that we might get from the people out there. Of course, you mentioned a good week for the Cardinals. They go 7-1 on the homestand, which was a very good homestand, very good test for the Cardinals. Some good teams there that they beat in Boston and Baltimore and the Cubs, and even when they had to dance around the raindrops a little bit, then go on the road to start this week with winning 2 or 3 in Cincinnati. Overall, a good stretch of 7 of their last 8 and 12 of the last 15.
It is a very exciting team to watch for sure. You know, it's when you see them come to the ballpark, you've got some confidence that this team's going to find a way to get it done. The offense is coming through, and been a lot of bright spots.
And I really think that the way they played for the last 10 days or so is kind of the team we expected back in spring training. It's kind of encouraging to see, because I think when they got off to the poor start, even though we kind of all talked about how difficult the schedule was in April and how much if they got through it at 500 they would be okay. But I think the fact that they didn't bury themselves, it was encouraging. They didn't make it to 500 at the end of April, but they were close. And now they are back at 500.
And back at 500 now. So, yeah, certainly when you look at the roster, you're you look at the standings, you're in a bright spot when you're back to 500. You're second place in the division, only 5 games out of first. You're doing it against the teams you needed to, and it's been exciting to watch.
And I think we all knew that, and I think we've seen it play out, even though the Cardinals have not had a lot of games within the division. They have now played, 3 of the 4 division opponents. They haven't yet to play the Pirates. But the Brewers and the Cubs and the Reds, I think the Cardinals have proven right now they could hold their own with those 3 teams.
And you're taking advantage of a Reds team that is really struggling, right? And there's certainly got some guys that are not healthy and have had some issues, and that's when you have to find a way to win, right? You have to win the games on the schedule when they come up and find a way to, put things away. And, you look back on the season and you're like, you wish you could have done that against the Red Sox or the White Sox. And, there's some spots that didn't look like the way they should have gone, but now it's finally looking like they're the team that we thought they'd be.
But I do think, the Reds swept the Dodgers too before the Cardinals got to town. So I think every team kind of goes through a little bit of ebbs and flows of the season. And, it's kind of like they say, we actually hit the 1/3 mark of the season with the game on Wednesday when the Cardinals beat the Reds. So right at 500, 27-27 and 54 games into the season. And you always say basically that every team is going to win 1/3 of their games. Every team is going to lose 1/3 of their games. It's what happens in that last third that determines who wins the championship. Now, the Cardinals are going to have to be better than a 500 team to win this division, but I think we see signs that could happen.
And I think you look back to the beginning of May where this team was 9 games under 500, and you thought this really could have been going the same direction as last year's team, but yet this team found a way to turn it around. And the way they've been playing over these last 2 weeks has really showed that this team is capable of doing a lot more than we think.
And I think if you compare the 2 teams last year to this year, the one thing that we all talked about, and again, kind of getting back to spring training, what we thought would be different about this team, it's been the pitching staff.
Absolutely. And I still think, a lot of people said at the offseason that Kyle Gibson, Lance Lynn, and Sonny Gray, weren't the 3 big names that anybody wanted. But you look at the rotation now and you look at the record when those 3 guys pitch, they have a chance to win every time they're on the mound. And every time they're on the mound, those guys are going 6 or 7 innings. And that's what saved this bullpen a lot too.
And I think we've seen a little better performance out of Miles Michaelis the last couple of starts too, which is encouraging. And then, of course, we don't know for sure what's going to happen going forward, but at least for one game, they got a win out of the 5th starter, and Andre Palante came back up from Memphis. I had my doubts about how he would do. I have to admit that, but he goes out there and throws 6 shutout innings against the Reds. The Cardinals win the ball.
I was a little worried that, there were a few too many walks, but he found a way to get a double play here and there and keep him back in the game. And that's the thing, sometimes you got to be lucky to get there, but maybe Palante can fill that gap for a little bit until Steven Matz comes back.
And I think that the way that the offense has played over the last 10 days, which I think even with a couple of games in Cincinnati not scoring a lot of runs, they've averaged about 5 runs a game during this stretch when they played better. And if you score 5 runs a game, you better have a good enough pitching staff to win some ball games.
You should, yeah, absolutely. And there's been some hiccups here and there recently with the bullpen, but for the most part, this pitching staff is what's kept them in games. And now the offense is doing their part to pick them up.
Yeah, I think the one concern, if you had one over the last week, is the fact that the Cardinals, three-headed monster, as Mason Wynn called it, with Romero, Kittredge, and Helsley, have all kind of sprung a leak a little bit here at the same time. They've managed to win the games, and Helsley's been able to get the saves, but they've all been a little bit rocky. I think he's given up runs in 3 consecutive games in the 9th inning. So you better have more than 1 run lead, I guess.
Yeah, for sure. And the question mark is, what is he doing differently that he wasn't doing before? And it seems to me that they're hitting his fastball now. He's still throwing 100, but they're finding a way to hit it. So what can they change, or what can they do differently to work him out there? And is it more rest, or is it more repetition so he doesn't rest? I don't know what the answer is there.
Yeah, I think you got to know that, again. It's kind of like we talked about with the team going through peaks and valleys in the course of the season. I guess every pitcher, every hitter is going to have that too. We've certainly seen it on the hitting side. Some of the guys who have not played up to speed or up to what we expected them to do, but some of the other guys have exceeded that. So I guess that's why they say that's why you play a 162 game season. It's not a sprint. It's a marathon until you get to September. Then it's a sprint. So I think that there's time for him to get that fixed, but. Yeah, if that trend continues, then it may become a problem.
I think so too. But as we talked about before, this offense is scoring 5, 6, 7 runs, and that's what's helping. So if they continue to do that, and you're starting to see the guys that we talked about from the beginning, Goldie and Arenado, starting to put it together. Arenado finally got some power there. Finally got a home run, and I think he felt you could see it after the game when he was talking post game that he just was finally seeing the ball better and looking a lot better. And if those guys can start to trend in the right direction, everything else is going to fall in place.
And I don't care how much of you played the game, how long you played in the big leagues, the success that you've had in the big leagues, the all-star level, Gold Glove level, MVP in Goldschmidt's case, MVP finalist in Arenado's case in the past. If you're having problems, struggling, this game becomes awfully tough from a mental standpoint. And I think that's the one thing that getting that home run did. It gave him a little bit of a freedom and relaxed him a little bit mentally. So even though he had the day off on Wednesday, which was pre-planned, so he could have the advantage of the off day on today's Thursday as well, let's see what happens this weekend in Philadelphia.
Yeah, and I'm really hoping that the confidence in him relaxing at the offensive side of things will help his defense, because that's really where he struggled a little bit this year too, is he's making some errors that you don't normally see him make over there. You wonder if some of his struggles offensively have carried over to that, and so he's starting to, as you said, mentally think about the whole game. Let's really hope that this offensive spark for him relaxes him a little bit and slows down. And you can tell it's done that with Goldie, right? He's started to feel a little bit better at the plate too, and certainly looks like he's better.
And I also think it probably helps both of those guys, even though they know they're the bellwether cows of this team. They know they have to be the leaders of this club offensively. It probably helps them to realize that there are some other guys performing well as well, so maybe they don't have to be the guy every night.
And you're starting to see it from other spots in the lineup too, right? Lars Nootbaar is starting to show some of that power back and be the guy that he was before, which can really help in this lineup.
Nolan Gorman hit his home run in 2 consecutive games. I also had a big RBI double. And they need to get his back going. It would be a big plus as well. But then we have to talk about the guy that has probably been the catalyst in this team. And I would say, especially since Contreras got hurt, maybe you could make an argument splitting the two between them and them. But if you had to pick an MVP of this club, it's Mason Wynn.
It's Mason Wynn, absolutely. To me, the most remarkable stat about Mason Wynn is that he's leading all of the major leagues in hits with 2 strikes. And for someone that young, that age, to be able to come through it, and I think he had, 2 hits the other day with 2 strikes as well? I mean, he just finds a way to get the ball done, and he's not up there trying to look for a home run every time. He just says, I want to get on base and then see what happens. And you need that in this lineup.
Yeah, I think he probably would. If the Cardinals had admitted, they probably would be saying they were a little bit surprised by how well he's done offensively this season. I don't think they saw that come. And the fact that he never strikes out.
Never.
For a young hitter in a game where strikeouts are, random and I mean, prevalent. I mean, everybody strikes out 2 or 3 times a game. He struck out once in the last 3 weeks. So
and anything that you can do on an 18-game hitting streak to be in the same conversation with Albert Pujols is probably a pretty good stat, right? And everybody, was high on Jordan Walker when he did the same thing, and now the question is, can he reach Joe McEwing?
Yeah, it's the 18-game streak for Mason Wynn going into the start of the series this weekend, Friday night in Philadelphia. Second longest streak in Cardinal history by a rookie, Joe McEwing, Super Joe. 25-game streak, remarkable in 1999. That's the only guy ahead Mason went on that streak, hitting .369 over the course of those 18 games, 7 doubles, 2 home runs, 11 RBIs. Did get thrown out to caught stealing twice on Wednesday. It was kind of a little bit of a bummer. But, yeah, and then you got to talk about how much he's done offensively. And then you also flip the script, how great he's played defensively.
He's been very great defensively, too. And I think that's what's helped a lot, right? Because he knows that he can get to a lot of things. And he's got an arm over there that's really going to help him reach with that range, too. And so the defense has been great. But it's been exciting to watch how confident and calm he is at the plate, too.
And I think the other guy that's kind of done probably a little bit better than you and I expected, maybe somebody else had him being higher performance-wise, was Alec Burleson. And he is also the classic guy that's taking advantage of the opportunity.
Absolutely. And I don't know how many bats he is away from qualifying, but if he was able to qualify at this point in time, he would be leading the majors in batting average.
Right.
And
I think the other day it was like 10 short, so he's getting close.
That's pretty remarkable, isn't it? For a guy that we didn't think was probably going to make the team coming out of spring training based on just being the odd man out with adding Carpenter and Brandon Crawford. And he has certainly taken advantage of every opportunity. And the other guy that's really taken advantage of it too is Michael Ciani.
Yeah, he definitely has, especially defensively. He has gone through a couple offensive spells where he did pretty well. Hasn't done as well lately offensively, but still makes 1 or 2 plays a night that helps you win a ball game.
He makes a couple catches out there in center that you are very happy that he's out there for sure. And again, if the rest of this lineup is hitting, you can use a guy like that to be okay in there every now and then.
I think the one guy now that I look at today, and he started to come on a little bit. He got 3 hits the other day, one of the games in Cincinnati, that they need to get going a little better offensively is Donovan.
Yes.
Whether he's hitting leadoff or hitting down the lineup, I think they're still expecting maybe him to make a little bit more contributions offensively than he has.
And I know they keep toying with the lineup a little bit. Donovan hitting leadoff to right-handed pitchers and Wynn hitting leadoff to left-handed pitchers. But I really like Mason Wynn at the leadoff spot. And, maybe that's something that starts to stick for him eventually. And then you got some options with Donnie because you could bat him second or leave Newpar second and drop Donnie down to, 5th or 6th. And maybe that helps him.
He actually hit 9th the other night when Ciani had the day off. And that's almost like a second.
It's almost like a second leadoff, yeah.
Well, we mentioned the Cardinals have the day off on Thursday. Hopefully that won't cool off the hot streak, but they have their challenge ahead of them here starting on Friday night. They're going into Philadelphia, Citizens Bank Ballpark, to take on the Phillies, who, by the way, have the best record in baseball.
It's going to be a test for sure. It's going to be hard, but it's nice that they're going in there playing well and having confidence that they can play with anybody.
Michaelis, Lynn, and Gray lined up to play the 3 games. Of course, Saturday's game, the Fox game of the week, Sunday night back on ESPN, Sunday Night Baseball. So national audience get to see the Cardinals play both of those nights. And then road trip will continue, longest road trip of the season. 3 cities, 9 games, 10 days. They go on to Houston to take on the Astros, who have not played very well to this point.
They have not played well, so let's hope it can be a good 3 games up in Philly and finish off the road trip well in Houston.
We'll have all of that action covered for you here on STLSportsPage.com. Check out all of our stories, all of our features, and again, thanks to our sponsors, Archwell Health, the Wrongs Experience. If you haven't been out to Westport yet to check it out, you need to do that soon. And the Drury Hotel, of course, travel anywhere this summer. Be sure to stay at the Drury Hotel. If you can, use the discount code SPORTS, and you won't be disappointed. So, special edition of the show here today. We thank you for tuning in. Enjoy this weekend's Cardinals games, everybody. We'll be back next week. Another edition of Brains on the Cardinals podcast here on STLSportsPage.com.